Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gorilla Whale, a Godzilla watch-along podcast. I am your kaiju consultant, Kevin Carpenter.
And I am a crystal-covered meteorite, Kayla Knutson.
And today we are talking about a mid-to-good movie that has the stupidest premise we've come across so far, and that's saying something.
Mid to good is interesting.
We'll have this discussion. Today we are talking about 1994's Godzilla versus SpaceGodzilla.
Hold on, let me make sure that the mic gets that sigh. Okay.
This feels like a premise where it's day 3, hour 9 in the writer's room, and they haven't figured it out yet. So one of them...
Oh, this is not day 3, hour 9. This is like week 3, hour 9.
Week 3, hour 9. They haven't figured it out yet. One of the writers, who's on his 9th Starbucks coffee, is just like, fuck it. Godzilla versus SpaceGodzilla. Let's do it. We got to get this in by Christmas.
Every day I wake up and I have to watch a Godzilla movie. And sometimes it's fine.
So
Shin Godzilla win.
So this is the penultimate movie of the Heisei era. The next one we're watching is going to be the final Heisei era movie. So this is the lead up to that one. And it has the most continuity with all of the other Heisei era movies here. There's callbacks to almost all of them in this one. And so they're weaving a strict narrative thread here in Godzilla versus SpaceGodzilla. They're pulling out all of the writing stops in Godzilla versus SpaceGodzilla. And it kind of shows. It's a little better written than some of the previous movies, in my opinion.
I was bored.
You were bored?
I can't wait for you to tell me what this movie was about, because I watched it 2 days ago, and mostly I remember that Mickey is there and she's a psychic.
Psychic Mickey is there. She's the protagonist.
There's like another like robot toy thing. I just remember every time, like 50% of the time anything was happening on screen, I was like, that's a toy ad. And I was not processing anything other than toy, buy our toy.
Well, here's the deal. That new robot is not as new as you'd think. Let's go into the historical context. In 1957, Toho released a film titled The Mysterians. In this film, directed by Ishiro Honda, aliens come to Earth and demand territory and the ability to breed with human women. Humanity refuses these demands, believing the Mysterians are really attempting to conquer the Earth. They are correct. In a great conflict with Earth's nations, the Mysterians release giant drill-nosed robots known as Mogera.
But were they hot?
The Mysterians?
Yeah.
This is a Toho alien movie. They looked like humans. They were wearing multicolored Power Ranger-esque suits, but for the most part, they were just humans in colorful clothes.
Okay, because, like, if they were hot, then I do feel like they would get a lot of volunteers.
I mean, yeah, if a bunch of aliens came down to Earth and it's like, we want this 2-mile radius patch of land and also the ability to marry and breed with human women, there would be a dating app within hours.
Oh, yeah. People would be driving and flying across the world.
There would be a whole new incel movement. Is centered around these aliens are taking our women.
All of those terrible... Oh my god, so many terrible human men would be so pissed that women would rather breed with aliens than with them. It's like that trend on TikTok that's like, hear me out. And without fail, usually when the guys do the hear me out cake, which is when you put a little cutout picture, in case anybody doesn't know, a hear me out cake is when you stick a little cutout picture taped to a popsicle stick or a toothpick or something, and you put it on the cake, and it's like, hear me out, I think they're hot, I'd be down to clown, right? And then everybody judges you, and you go around and around and around, multiple rounds. And usually with the guys, they're like fighting for their life to say Lola Bunny is hot. And it's like Lola Bunny is drawn to be attractive. This is barely a hear me out, you know? Like they're putting 40-year-old women on there. It's like Melanie Linsky is an attractive woman. Like, this is not hear me out, you know? Meanwhile, the girls are putting like the wild, actual like wild shit. Like, not just Venom, but like actual wild hear me out. It's like, these things are not human. Like, they're putting like Pyramid Head, which, I mean, Pyramid Head has like a humanoid body, so it's also barely a hear me out. But it's just like the girls are getting way freakier than the guys. And it's like, that's, you know, the whole thing with these incels. It's like the girls would fuck the tentacle monster from Star Wars Force Awakens, and they won't fuck you. Think about why.
God.
Maybe it's not your looks. Anyway, if they were hot, you know, I mean, Ishiro Honda is tapping into the pop culture consciousness. Can we watch The Mysterians? It's neither here nor there. Let's continue with the Godzilla movie we're on.
Yeah, I mentioned The Mysterians because the robot Mogera is from that 1957 Ishiro Honda movie. And up until this point, the Mysterians have had no connection with Godzilla. So it's kind of like if Joss Whedon was given another Avengers movie and then Buffy the Vampire Slayer just showed up. It's like, hey, where did you come from?
Did you say Josh Whedon?
Joss Whedon.
Oh, I thought you said Josh.
No, Joss.
Yeah.
Correcting me on my own podcast.
I heard Josh, that's all. I didn't hear it clearly enough.
We move forward to 1994. TriStar is still dragging their feet on making an American Godzilla movie, so Toho decides, hey, what the hell? Let's make another Godzilla movie of our own. We gotta get it out before the Children's Festival. I mean, before Christmas. You know, get that easy Godzilla money. So, Toho brings in new blood to bring this idea to life. We have new director Kensho Yamashita, who mostly worked in teen idol movies, but he was also the assistant director for Terror of Mechagodzilla, which, if you'll remember, was such a great film.
Mm-hmm.
New screenwriter Hiroshi Kashiwabara, who mostly worked in TV, and notably some of the Lupin the Third movies, which it has nothing to do with Godzilla, but I was just like, oh, hey, I like those. And then composer Akira Ifukube, the original Godzilla Music Man, refused to be involved in the film after reading the script. So now we have newcomer composer Takayuki Hattori, who doesn't have a whole lot of experience, but he will be composing future Godzilla projects. So this is his Godzilla beginning.
Uh-huh.
So new director, new screenwriter, new composer. We got the guy in the Godzilla suit to come back, Kenpachiro Satsuma. He's been the guy in the Godzilla suit for a while now. So that's what we're bringing along, our alumni here. And of course, Tomoyuki Tanaka is producing this film. So now, on December 10th, 1994, Godzilla vs. SpaceGodzilla releases.
It was a movie.
It sure was a movie. Let's get into it. A crystalline monster rockets through space. Chunks of crystal launch off of it and land on Earth. Underwater, Godzilla roars. We cut over to a UNGCC facility, and they still got that logo of like the Godzilla silhouette over the UN logo, and I laugh every time I see it.
Mm-hmm.
At the UNGCC facility, officials marvel at their new giant robot, the Mobile Operations Godzilla Universal Expert Robot Aerotype, or Mogera. Mogera is made up of two vehicles connected together, a tank with a drill called Land Mogera, and a jet called the Star Falcon. Have you bought our toys? Have you bought our toys yet?
If you have siblings or friends, then one person could play Land Mogera and one person could play Star Falcon, and then they combine together.
The robot comes with thick thighs made out of tires, wide yellow eyes, and drill hands and a drill nose.
Godzilla was thick, and the robot was thick, and it was a very... I want to talk to the designers. I'm like, do you design... It's the fact that it's the same silhouette. Like, the Godzilla and Mogera had the same silhouette. You know what I mean? That's why it's notable. The thick, absolute trunks. Just huge, big booty. Not a bad thing. Just very funny that it was the exact same silhouette on both of them.
It's also interesting because they originally had an idea of bringing back Mechagodzilla, but one, they wanted to sell new toys, and two, they had a writing discussion
Not
where
thick
it's like,
enough.
well, not thick enough. They could have made a thicker Mechagodzilla, but also apparently there was a like writer's room discussion where it's like, hey, if Godzilla and Mechagodzilla team up to fight SpaceGodzilla, it's going to be a curb stomp. We have to make a purposefully shittier robot for the stakes to work.
I hate that. That feels so lazy. I don't know, why couldn't SpaceGodzilla have just been super powerful? He's irradiated from space, and Godzilla eats radiation now, right? Whatever.
Right? Like, they can do whatever they want. We see this kneecapping of themselves for no reason throughout the Godzilla franchise. It's fascinating.
It's so weird, too, because it's like they're making up these rules that don't exist to kneecap themselves, and then ignoring all of the rules they've already established that could lead to story opportunities or could contradict what they've decided to go with instead. It's just, I don't whatever.
Yeah.
The rules don't matter. Well, whose kaiju is it anyway, where the rules don't matter? And the points are made up.
So Mogera is part of Project M to kill Godzilla, but the UNGCC are also working on Project T, which involves attaching a telepathy amplifier to Godzilla's neck and using a powerful psychic to control Godzilla. Now, who do we know that's a powerful psychic that also has a connection to Godzilla? That's right, Miki's back.
Miki.
Miki is reluctant to mind control Godzilla for the government, for obvious reasons. However, when she's told that they'll have to use another psychic child for Project T if she refuses, Miki falls in line.
Yeah.
It's very much like that scene in Neon Genesis Evangelion where it's like, Shinji, you have to get in the robot, or Rei has to get in the robot. Like, it's either you or
Get
her.
in the robot, Shinji.
Get in the robot, Miki.
Yeah.
Get in the Mechagodzilla, Miki.
Get in the mech. Yeah, I mean, I like that. It's fun. It's neat. It's a cool little device and a push for Miki to do something that she is morally against or whatever, you know, to put her at conflict, etc. I'd like to see what the kids would do, though. I have to say, I do think it would be interesting if these tiny psychic children were in the mech.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, they just get like 20 of the psychic kids and they put them in the mech. And it's like, all right, kids, do your psychic circle. Maybe you can talk to plants enough to take down Godzilla.
Yeah.
So 5 more characters join our protagonist squad. We have Koji and Kyo, who are both young G-Force soldiers. We have Dr. Okubo, who is an older man who really wants to mind control Godzilla to an almost creepy degree. We also have Dr. Gondo, a woman who wants to mind control Godzilla for personal reasons that will become apparent later. And we have Major Yuki, an older G-Force soldier who really, really wants to kill Godzilla. All of these characters come to Bass Island, where little Godzilla makes his home. You see, baby Godzilla grew up over the year to become even cuter, with greener scales and big chibi red eyes.
It's doing that thing that dogs and cats did when they were domesticated, where they hang on to kitten or puppy behavior because being cute endears you to humans and then you get like free food. This is what Godzillasaurus is doing. Baby Godzilla is domesticating itself.
Little Godzilla looks like a bath toy. Like little Godzilla has made himself more marketable over the year.
Yeah, very plushable. Very plushable.
Yeah. So in the previous movie, he's baby Godzilla. In this movie, he's little Godzilla. And the next movie, he'll be Godzilla Jr. So just keep those naming conventions in mind. At no point do we
Little
call him
Godzilla.
Manila.
I shan't dead name Little Godzilla.
So little Godzilla is nice to humans, and he even recognizes Miki. Oh, and also there's these weird crystalline growths that have appeared on the island, and no one knows what to do about those, but we're just going to ignore them for a little bit.
Don't worry about it. That was definitely a point of confusion for me because there was these giant crystal growth structures, like super jagged, sticking out of the island, and they were there and presented in such a way where they didn't really acknowledge it, and so I was a little confused about where did this come from? What is this doing? This probably has something to do with the meteor, right? But the meteor crashed into the ocean. This is on land. It was just like a whole thing where it was like, oh, okay, not that I don't want everything spoon fed to me, but we were a little too blasé about that.
Yeah, the direct connection I don't believe is like ever spoken, but these are from the meteors that impacted during the prologue. But it does kind of feel like these are natural parts of this monster island, or at the very least, like no one pays enough attention to them to like draw attention to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a weird monster island thing. So you're thinking, wait, was this supposed to be that it's always here? But it looks like the space stuff. But we saw the space stuff crashing into the ocean. We didn't know if it's impacted, how many times it's impacted. Has it been crashing into the ocean and on land? Has there been multiple impacts? Just a little line or two here and there can really go a long way, because when you take your audience out of it, when you distract them with stuff like that, and they're thinking, like, I'm thinking about the crystals and now I'm not paying attention to what's actually happening on the screen. So then I'm more confused and then stuff is happening. And it's just like, that's how you get bored. When you start losing people really early on like that, that's how I get distracted and bored, because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be paying attention to and what's important information. And yeah.
They are trying to build up a crystal mystery for the Godzilla versus SpaceGodzilla movie. And there is a scene where we go to like a UNGCC meeting and they show a video of this giant crystal going through a satellite. Really bad effects, by the way. It's like 3 people floating.
The effects were really bad in this movie.
They are very clearly 3 people in front of a green screen that then get pulled away by wires as this video plays of a crystal going through a satellite. It's a really bad effect.
And they put all the money into little Godzilla's suit.
Yeah, right. And then it cuts over to the UNGCC meeting, and there's a white guy who says in perfect English, "We think it was some kind of giant monster."
Yeah, that made me laugh. That made me laugh out loud. I love the obviously bland American, probably American. I mean, theoretically, they could be Canadian. I don't think they said there was no about, but I love the bland white guy that speaks in English, that is some sort of diplomat or executive or whatever, representative with the UN, that says always gets like the funniest lines of dialogue, but funny in a very unintentional way. We think it was some kind of giant monster. Did he have a cigar in his hand, or was that a different
He did not have a cigar
scene?
in his hand, but I could imagine that.
Yeah, somebody had a cigar in their hand, I think, in this episode. Maybe they're blurring together.
This is how you know it's an international coalition, because they have a white guy who speaks English.
Yeah. And then it goes back to everybody speaking Japanese.
Yep. So Major Yuki, he's the older, more grizzled G-Force soldier. He recruits Koji and Kiyo, the younger G-Force soldiers, into burying tear gas mines along the island's coast. He has also created bullets filled with a special blood coagulant that he calls Yuki's Special. The Major plans to shoot Godzilla in a vulnerable point in his armpit and kill the monster once and for all.
I like the concept that these tear gas bombs are big enough to bother Godzilla. Like, he's huge, and tear gas bombs are meant for crowd control with people, obviously. So for that tear gas to get, now I know it would, gas expands to fill its container, so it would theoretically like rise, but I mean, like, that thing has to explode really high up to get into his nose. The dude's the size of a skyscraper. I mean, what? How big are these tear gas bombs? How are the soldiers not going to get affected by massive tear gas explosions? At least like a little bit, Because a tear gas bomb is supposed to be a smaller explosion so that it can be slightly more contained, right?
Well, I mean, we see the size of these tear gas mines, and they are like the size of Humvee tires. Like, these are huge bombs.
Doesn't this count as chemical warfare?
I mean, does it count as a war crime if it's against a kaiju?
Well, I mean...
Godzilla did not sign any treaty. I'm just saying.
Godzilla's not a part of the Geneva Conventions.
When the United Nations creates an entire department to try and kick your ass, I don't think you're involved in any of the United Nations treaties.
I suppose.
So, by the way, at one point we instantly cut from the boys bearing mines.
Hold on.
What? Okay.
By that logic, then, theoretically, you can commit war crimes of somebody, but if Japan has signed to the Geneva Conventions, that means that they can't. It doesn't matter if the opponent has signed to the Geneva Conventions or not. Japan would still be beholden to them, right? So Japan is still committing war crimes.
I don't know how... Listen, I don't know the granularities of the Geneva Conventions. All I know is that this is the 5th movie where they're trying to figure out how to beat Godzilla. And also Major Yuki, I think, is not in a great headspace to care about war crimes anyway.
No. I like that there are 5 movies in and they're like, tear gas?
Yeah.
Maybe they were watching when did this movie come out? Maybe they were watching the LA riots on TV and were like, well, the LAPD seems to love it, so let's try it.
Oof, this movie came out in 1994, so I don't know if the LA riots had a direct connection to Godzilla versus SpaceGodzilla. Let's do a history moment.
Oh yeah, that was in the early 90s. It was 1992. There
cool.
you go.
So I have not seen any interviews where they talk about how they saw the LA riots on the news and were like, hey, let's throw some of that tear gas in our Godzilla movie. I think that...
I'm just speculating wildly here.
Sure.
But...
You're creating your own movie because the movie you watched was not good enough.
I'm just mentally, in my mind, the entire time opening up a AO3 tab and making notes.
So real quick, at one point we instantly cut from the boys bearing mines to a shot of Major Yuki's man ass as he's showering outside. I don't know why this cut is here, but hey, moving on. Kayla, was that fan service
sex
for
sells.
you?
It's because sex sells. Put more sex in the kaiju family film.
I also do want to real quick pause and go into the protagonist motivations here real quick. Because we have Major Yuki, who wants to kill Godzilla to an incredible degree. Like, this is his own plan. He is very clearly like, I know you all have come here with your own ideas. I want to kill Godzilla. And then
he is acting without authorization.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, Koji and Kyo are the younger G4 soldiers who are basically sent here on orders to just help out whatever. So they're both Team Project T and also Team Project Yuki. Meanwhile, Project T, that's what the 2 doctors are here for. They're like, we want to telepathically control Godzilla because then we can make him a great asset. They won't figure out that technology for another 5 years because it's the far off year of 1999 where they figure out, where the UN figures out how to create their mind control giant
It's a
monster.
wrong era. We're on a different continuity now, Kevin.
And meanwhile, Miki is like, I am going to cooperate with whatever is going on, but also I am reluctant to do anything to Godzilla because he's my special little boy. So that was one of the things I found interesting about this movie is after 2 movies where we just had complete dud main characters, we actually have a group of protagonists who have differing motivations, but are all still centered around Godzilla. And you think that would be an easy thing to write in these Godzilla movies, but you'd be surprised.
I don't know why I thought that this interhuman conflict would be more interesting.
I mean, that's fair.
I thought, this is what I have been begging for, and we finally get it, and I was just like, god damn it.
I mean, at least it's not low-rent Indiana Jones or pilot who's bad at his job because he's too focused on pteranodons.
Yeah, it is better. It's better. It's just not being executed with the level that I would like. The problem with watching Godzilla -1 as the very first Godzilla movie you've ever seen is that it sets the bar in the fucking stratosphere.
Yeah.
And very few Godzilla movies are capable of competing, and many, many other ones are much lower to the ground. And I feel like I'm ragging on this one a lot, but I think it's because it has so much potential. Unlike some of the other ones, this one has a lot of potential, and I was still left wanting. You know what I mean? Like I sometimes I grade them harsher because of that, because I really thought that they tried, or they could have tried harder, I guess.
Well, and here's the thing. Godzilla -1 sets the bar in the stratosphere, but so does the original Godzilla.
Yes! Yeah, that's the other thing, too. I watched my first Godzilla movie is Godzilla -1, Stratosphere. I'm like, whoa. And then I watched the original Godzilla. I'm like, whoa, it's really good. Like, holy shit. And then I watched everything else after it, and it's a variety of emotions and reactions.
I'm just saying, if you are going to step up into a legendary franchise, you need to step up. You are going to be in the shadow of what came before. So, something bad is coming to Earth. Miki sees a tiny spectral Mothra that then transforms into red holograms of the twin cosmos. The cosmos warn that a monster is coming to Earth, and if Godzilla is not available to fight it, the Earth is doomed. As the UNGCC picks up the incoming threat on their radar, they send their Mogera robot into space to fight it. This threat is SpaceGodzilla. SpaceGodzilla looks like Godzilla, except he has a spiky yellow crown on his forehead and two giant crystals emerging from his shoulders.
Shoulder pads.
Giant crystal shoulder pads.
Mm-hmm.
In his flying form, SpaceGodzilla is also wrapped up in a giant crystal. Mogera meets SpaceGodzilla in the middle of an asteroid field, which looks like a bunch of foam rocks hanging perfectly still from wires inside of a black room, which I think would have been more acceptable in the 70s than in 1994. But they had to make this movie in a year.
I mean, if it was black and white, it probably would have played a little bit better too.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of get away with a little bit more. Black and white is very forgiving.
Mogera and SpaceGodzilla duke it out, flying around the asteroids, firing lasers at each other. But Mogera is unable to stop SpaceGodzilla from continuing towards Earth. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the human gang prepare to face Godzilla. At first, little Godzilla triggers the mines by accident, and the baby kaiju is adorably tear-gassed.
See, it's weird.
It's...
Like, baby these tear gas mine bombs are scaled for Godzilla. So now they're hitting a creature that's like, I don't know, a sixth of Godzilla size, maybe an eighth of Godzilla size. Like, little Godzilla's little. It's like, that's a lot of tear gas.
I just didn't think that anything could be adorably tear-gassed, but I stand corrected. That was a very adorable moment of this little Godzilla just being like, oh no, my eyes, meh, and then like stepping on mines.
Yeah, they were really underplaying how damaging. I don't know. I mean, they're kaiju. I guess maybe it's not as damaging to them. Tear gas will fuck you up, man.
Well, he's a little Godzilla. I think it's kind of cool that like even a baby Godzilla is like extremely durable.
Yeah, that's the takeaway that I want to take from this. Not that tear gas isn't that big of a deal.
So then, Godzilla appears. After Godzilla takes a long while to come out of the sea and onto land, and I'm talking like 4 minutes, our heroes spring into action.
They don't have... this movie is packed with so much, and yet they're like, we're going to take 4 minutes for Godzilla to appear and get... Jesus Christ! Some efficiency!
Koji and Kyo get on a motorbike and attempt to find a spot where they can shoot the telepathy amplifier onto the back of Godzilla's neck. Dr. Gondo, Dr. Okubo, and Psychic Miki wait in a tent, ready to try to mind control Godzilla. And Major Yuki is on his own, waiting for the perfect moment to shoot Godzilla dead. As Godzilla triggers the mines, Koji and Kyo take the shot and attach the device. However, Miki is unable to take control of Godzilla. Dr. Okubo futzes with the controls and short-circuits the device, almost killing Miki in the process.
Here's one of my questions that I had while watching this. The government sends a group of people to make Godzilla an asset, and then they have one of their own rogue agents there on that island attempting to kill this guy. and kill this guy, kill Godzilla, and the team of government agents isn't like, hey, don't do that. You know?
There's this undercurrent that Major Yuki is such a skilled soldier that he kind of has that, like, rogue agent, but he gets the job done kind of energy. The issue is we don't get that build up.
Yeah, but also there's no, like, what they should have done, I think, or what maybe would have played better, or would have been more like convincing or realistic, I guess, is if they kind of like arrested if he lied about his motivations to them. It was like, no, I'm not gonna, realizes they're here to take Godzilla alive, essentially, and thus that they would be obstacles to his plot of killing Godzilla. He lies to them and then quote unquote betrays them to go try and kill Godzilla. Or if he tells them, I'm gonna kill Godzilla, and they're like, no, you're not. We need Godzilla. Lock him down, and then he shows off how badass special ops he is by breaking out of the prison or the hold, or, you know, they've got him like handcuffed in the back of the trunk, and he gets out, you know, because he's super cool and badass, and he still enacts his plan. But they're just like, okay, well, you try that, and we're gonna try this at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of just they leave him to his own devices. That's the problem, is they kind of leave him to his own devices for no good reason. Because you could argue, like, well, they're afraid. It's not even, he doesn't even threaten to kill them. It's not like he's like, well, if you get in my way, I'm going to threaten to kill you. And they're like, well, I guess we won't try, you know?
It is weird.
Or there's no, like, there's no way he's going to kill Godzilla. It's fine, whatever, we can ignore it. It just, that they just are like, okay, whatever.
It is weird because, yeah, it's like we're doing this incredibly sensitive operation to mind control Godzilla. And Major Yuki is very open, like, I am going to shoot Godzilla dead. That is why I am here. And everyone's like, okay.
See, that's the point. Like, that's my problem with this interhuman conflict, is if the humans don't actually care about their conflicting interests, how am I supposed to care?
That's fair.
Like, they all have these conflicting motivations, which should put them at odds, furthering the idea that, like, if humans can't work together, if they can't get their shit together, then they're gonna get rocked by SpaceGodzilla. And this whole larger idea and theme of humanity must work together to solve existential problems, or divided we explode. And yet, they don't do that. They have the setup and they don't do the follow-through. And that's my problem with the human plot of this movie, and why I'm ragging on it so much more than Indiana Jones knockoff, because Indiana Jones knockoff didn't set up anything interesting, so it couldn't fail. This is setting up something interesting and then completely ignoring it for no reason. It's not even that they failed, that it didn't quite execute right, they're just ignoring it. It's just like the space growths, the crystal space growths on the island. It's there. No explanation, like, whatever.
I think there is something to be said about how potential that is set up and then wasted is worse than no potential
It's
at
worse.
all.
It's worse.
So, speaking of wasted potential, Project T is a failure. So now we're going with Project Yuki Special. But at that exact moment, SpaceGodzilla arrives. Little Godzilla is excited to meet another Godzilla. But then, SpaceGodzilla fires his lightning breath at the child. Fuck them kids.
Fuck them kids! That was funny. That was good.
Godzilla stomps in to fight this jackass that's hurting his son. But as he fires his atomic breath, SpaceGodzilla throws up an energy shield that blocks it. SpaceGodzilla then flies around, firing his lightning breath at Godzilla and knocking him down. But instead of dealing a finishing blow, SpaceGodzilla kidnaps Little Godzilla and flies away from Godzilla.
We've said Godzilla too many times.
I love it. Could you imagine if Mechagodzilla was also in this movie?
Oh, God. Here's the thing. The worst drinking game you could play listening to this podcast would be to take a sip anytime we say Godzilla. But this, or any variation thereof, you know? Mm-hmm. This episode in particular, you would get alcohol poisoning very quickly, I think. Don't do it.
I think it also says something that we're in the Heisei era of Godzilla, and we had the original Kaiju Biollante, and then all of the rest of our original Kaiju are mirror images of other kaiju. Like we have Mecha King Ghidorah, we have Batra, we have SpaceGodzilla. And it's like, even when we're technically making a new kaiju, it's still just a mirror image of another kaiju.
It's indicative of the intellectual and creative rot at the center of this cash grab that the franchise has become in the late Heisei era. This lack of originality and lack of bravery in taking swings has led to a decay. Godzilla vs. Biollante slapped. SpaceGodzilla, whack.
Our heroes split up, with Miki, Koji, and Kyo staying on the island, while Major Yuki and the doctors head back to the UNGCC. Dr. Gondo comes up with a theory, and I loved watching this theory because I knew you, Kayla, would also love this theory for SpaceGodzilla's creation.
It's fine.
You see, SpaceGodzilla is made up of Godzilla cells that were taken to space, either from Biollante or Mothra. They're not sure which. It could be either. So Gondo theorizes that those cells then fell into a black hole, emerged from a white hole, crashed into some space crystals, or grew them themselves, it's not really sure which, absorbed star radiation, and then regenerated into SpaceGodzilla.
I mean, listen, it's 1997, right? Do we... I think we, at this point in our existence, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we have some idea of how life... I mean, we're still trying to figure out how life forms exactly. I'll give you that. However... What the fuck is that? Why is it so... Do they think that adding extra steps makes it sound more plausible? What the fuck is a white hole? I've never heard... Is that an actual thing that
No,
am
that's
I
an
learning
actual
something
thing.
new? Oh, that's really exciting. I'm going to deep dive on that Wikipedia page later. But I don't understand. Why couldn't it have just been... It's so silly, and I'm not against silly here, okay? But does this mean that SpaceGodzilla doesn't have to... I guess SpaceGodzilla doesn't have to breathe, I suppose.
No, he's SpaceGodzilla.
Neither does Mothra. Does Godzilla have to breathe?
Godzilla lives underwater, so he doesn't have to breathe oxygen.
Sharks breathe oxygen.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, we've seen Godzilla, like, sleep underwater for years at a time. So, like,
right.
even if he has
he's got some sort of gill system, theoretically, that is filtering this.
Yeah.
He still needs oxygen. All living creatures on Earth that are animals need oxygen. I don't want to get into fungi right now.
Yeah. No, that's actually... Godzilla is a fungus. Send tweet.
Because, I mean, plants do carbon dioxide, and they emit oxygen, and then animals need oxygen, and they emit carbon dioxide, and that's blah, blah, blah. Fungi, I don't know enough about to speak on that. Anyway, why couldn't it have just been that the cell... Because, like, we think that potentially life on Earth actually came from... it's possible that it came from another space. In space. That the cells that became life were the elements, the core little bits, came in on an asteroid and landed here, and then life was formed. Like, the building blocks of life could have come from outer space. So, love the idea of the building blocks of Godzilla being launched into space and then creating some sort of space clone. Feel like it couldn't have happened in a black hole, because then it would have been in one long spaghetti Godzilla. And now we don't have Spaghetti Godzilla.
No, that was Biollante.
Why didn't it just... Why... on another planet? No,
remember Biollante was a third Godzilla, and she had all the noodles.
No, I mean... Yes, I know, the tentacles. But I mean, why didn't the cells land on a planet? And then that's where SpaceGodzilla formed, on this planet, instead of in the vacuum of space where... that shit ain't happening.
No, that was what the crystals were for.
What the fuck? It feels unnecessary, you know?
Well, after this explanation, which, by the way, they're very clear, like, this is our theory. We actually don't know how SpaceGodzilla was actually formed. We're just as confused as you are. Basically, Earth is screwed. And now Major Yuki needs to pilot Mogera to have any hope of getting out of this. We cut back to the island where
Who was piloting Mogera before?
Just like 3 random guys.
So why does Miki need to plan?
No, Miki's not piloting Mogera. It's Yuki.
Oh, Yuki.
Yeah.
Yuki, who's never been in Mogera.
No, Yuki's never been in Mogera.
It's gonna be him now instead of...
There's a scene where like an upper-ranking military guy like comes up to Yuki, and Yuki's like smoking a cigarette.
You got soft behind that desk.
Yeah, man, going to too many meetings turns you ugly. I'm a rogue guy who's out in the field all the time, and I really, really want to kill Godzilla.
I'm so manly.
Yeah, and the military commander guy is like, you son of a bitch, you're a rogue agent, but we need you to pilot the robot to fight SpaceGodzilla, because you're the only man who can do this. And
like, why? Why is he the only one that's qualified? Like, he wasn't on that team before.
I don't know. It's a lot less of a badass conversation than I'm actually depicting it as.
We're just being told that this guy is actually Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
You know? At least Tom Cruise is proven that he's Tom Cruise. Every Mission Impossible movie, you're like, I don't think he can do that. And then he does it. This, he failed at killing Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like, that's all he's done, is that he failed at killing Godzilla on the one chance that we see him go. We haven't actually seen him be badass and cool. Like, actually badass and cool. What has he done? He's failed, just like the government.
Mm-hmm.
What's so special about him? Nothing. He's got a 5 o'clock shadow? That's not hard. Give me some mascara, I could do it.
Kayla's drag king performance of Major Yuki.
Like, what is this guy not? It's fine. It's fine. John Wick. Never.
John Wick versus Godzilla, I would see.
John Wick could potentially do it. I think he could do it. I think he could take, with enough preparation. Not even preparation. Just with the axe, it's fine.
So we cut back to the island. We cut back to the island, Kayla. I need to get through the summary. So, we're back at the island. Miki receives another message from Mothra in the cosmos. And by the way, it's all of these like hologram Mothras in the cosmos. And it really puts into effect like, oh, we wrote out Mothra 2 movies ago. And now we need to come up with this psychic Mothra horseshit in order to get the female demographic, I guess.
Get her fucking name out of your mouth. Not you, Kevin. You're an angel, and we're glad you're here. But SpaceGodzilla, what the fuck is this movie? Godzilla versus SpaceGodzilla. Get Mothra's name out of your mouth. What the fuck?
So
why isn't she just sensing the SpaceGodzilla? If she has a telepathic connection to Godzilla, why are we overcomplicating this movie in the worst ways and then completely sidelining anything we could actually be focusing on?
Also, we already had a deep space fight. Why wasn't it Mothra fighting Crystal Godzilla in space? Sorry, Space Godzilla.
Because Mothra would have won. And then there wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah.
That's why.
Mothra would have taken care of Space Godzilla in space. We would have had no movie. You're right.
She's just out here apparently being useless, just sending messages back to Miki of like, tell my ex that this other guy that looks just like him but cooler is coming to fight. Can he fight? She's not doing jack shit. What do you mean she's not doing jack shit? Mothra is always on it. It's fine.
You are right though. If there's anything Mothra is good at, it's fighting Godzilla, and so she would have taken down Space Godzilla. God, I want that movie. I want that 4-minute short film.
She's just warning them instead of ignoring it. I don't. Why do you even have her in here?
So the message is, hey,
Miki's
really
already sidekick.
Yeah, the message is really make sure you have Godzilla around to kill Space Godzilla because that's very important. And then, as the sun sets over the ocean and everything turns orange, Koji joins her at the shoreline and asks for her opinion on Godzilla. Miki replies that Godzilla is a creature with feelings just like them. So what if he has a body count in the thousands?
So what? This is like in Jurassic World when Bryce Dallas Howard is like, but the dinosaurs. And we're like, but girl, we're not evolved to be with the dinosaurs. And like, I love dinosaurs. I don't want to live on the same planet as them at the same time. Like, we got to take care of these genetic monstrosities. They're not even actually dinosaurs. They're just hybrid. We're not going to get into that. Keep going.
It's also so clear that this sunset beach conversation is supposed to be like a romantic moment between these two characters. And it's not. Like, the framing is all there. but they have no
But we
chemistry.
haven't established. Yeah, we have no. That's what I'm saying. Why are we fucking around with Cosmos for no reason when we could be establishing a love story between Koji and Miki so that this fucking makes a lick of sense when we get to it? But instead, it's just like suddenly we're, almost halfway through the movie at this point, and it's like maybe they have the hots for each other. I'm like, no, you got to establish that shit early.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, Miki's sympathy for Godzilla does nothing to protect her from being kidnapped the following night by mysterious figures. Koji and Kyo are airlifted from the island by Dr. Gondo, where she reveals her tragic backstory. Dr. Gondo is the sister of Colonel Goro Gondo, who got murked by Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Biollante. Remember him? He was the guy that, noticed that Godzilla was about to wake up, and he, looks at the camera and goes, "Amen." And it was badass.
Yeah.
That guy. Major Yuki was also a good friend of Goro's, which is why he has a vendetta against Godzilla. If that's not enough, Dr. Okubo, the creepy guy, he's disappeared, and everyone suspects he's gone rogue. Very, very quickly, we cut over to Major Yuki, Koji, and Kyo breaking into a city building. We have, no time to actually process that information. We're right into the next thing. You see, Dr. Okubo has allied with the Yakuza, and they've kidnapped Miki so they can mind control Godzilla.
Sure.
Destruction, Dr. Okubo says. Isn't that what Godzilla's about?
I just... Sure. Let's bring in... It's like they were drawing a bunch of cards. It's like fucking Mad Libs. The Yakuza? Okay.
They need to give the humans something to do for 10 minutes, I guess, because we very quickly go into this Yakuza subplot, and then we very quickly come out of it. So, the three G-Force soldiers, Major Yuki, Koji, and Kyo, break in, and they have a shootout with some Yakuza, and at one point, they find Miki tied to a bed. The Yakuza tip over the bed to give themselves cover, and so Miki decides to do something she's never tried before, and just see if she has telekinesis.
This is ridiculous because I, as a child, attempted to see if I have telekinesis constantly. All kids do this, where it's like, maybe I'm special and I have telekinesis, and you hold out your hand and you lick the water bottle and maybe it'll come into your hand, and it doesn't. And you're telling me that this psychic never tried that before? You already have superpowers. You haven't tested to see what other superpowers you may potentially have. It's just gonna conveniently come up at the... I mean, listen, the concept of getting superpowered upgrades when you're in danger and there's some sort of adrenaline rush, sure. But she's been in danger plenty of times at this point, and we've never tried telekinesis. And then when she does it, she's just like, they're like, "How'd you do that?" And they're like, "It's telekinesis. It's one of my powers." And you're like, wait a minute. Did she know that she did this? And we never did this before.
No, she specifically says, "I have never tried to see if I have telekinesis. And so I just winged it, and it turns out I also have telekinesis."
Again, this movie, lazy, whack. You could do so much better, and I don't understand why every time that there's a lick of potential in one of these movies, it gets squandered to high heaven. Why is there a Yakuza subplot right now?
I had to pad it out. They had to fill up the time, I guess. So
they could have filled it out with actual interpersonal relationship drama, but they decided to ignore that our protagonists all have conflicting interests.
So Miki uses her newfound telekinesis that she's never tried before in any of her years at the psychic university that she went to. And so she lifts herself and the bed she's tied up into the air, allowing Koji to shoot the Yakuza's feet and free Miki. And that's it for the Yakuza subplot. Let's move on.
Why is it... You know what would have been actually cool? If Major Yuki is so driven by his desire for revenge that he's trying to kidnap Miki and use Miki's psychic powers or something to try and, lure Godzilla or kill Godzilla or whatever. It's like now they have to rescue her from Major Yuki, except Major Yuki's not supposed to be a villain. Mm-hmm. So they don't want to do that. They didn't want to have... And that's, I think it would have been okay for Major Yuki to be so morally ambiguous and all over the place. And like that kind of conflict would be interesting. But no, they're all supposed to be the good guys, and they can't have that level of moral ambiguity and actually be putting each other in danger, even though the concept of putting each other in danger over our conflicting interests, even if they're kind of valid, like, motivations, that would be so much more interesting and so much more thematically appropriate to the larger, like, Godzilla mythos of working together to deal with bigger problems, and the way that human conflict results in this destruction, because Godzilla is the specter of atomic annihilation. So, he's a man-made horror, and now we have further man-made problems that are getting in the way of dealing with the man-made horror that's going to annihilate everybody. Like, we could have had it all.
A lot of both literal and figurative missed shots in this movie.
God.
So, SpaceGodzilla flies over Japan, raining down destruction, before eventually landing in Fukuoka. There, he causes giant crystalline structures to rise throughout the city, creating his own Fortress of Solitude.
So, did he make those crystalline structures on Monster Island?
Yeah, those were from...
I don't care about the crystalline structures on Monster Island because the movie doesn't care about them either. Carry on.
It's a little unclear, but SpaceGodzilla is drawing energy from the crystal structures, and that's more explained in the final battle than in that previous moment. But you read the official summaries, and it's like SpaceGodzilla shot the crystal structures onto Earth, so that way he could have a little energy snack to snack on after he landed on Earth, and that's what the crystal structures on the Monster Island are for. But that's never explained in the actual movie itself.
Yeah. Once again, ancillary content should not be necessary for understanding the movie.
Yeah. So he causes these giant crystalline structures to rise throughout the city, and then meanwhile, Godzilla rises from the ocean in another part of Japan, and he stomps toward the city, destroying everything in his wake. I love this because Godzilla, technically kind of a hero, but he still doesn't give a shit about humans. Like, he will not walk around buildings, he will walk through buildings. And so everyone is still terrified of Godzilla in this movie.
Like, he could have popped up out of the water much closer to SpaceGodzilla and chose not to.
But no,
it's
everyone,
kind of funny.
Like, SpaceGodzilla is flying around and everyone's running away, and then Godzilla shows up and everyone's still running away because, oh shit, it's Godzilla.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, Koji, Kyo, and Major Yuki climb into Mogera to pilot it. So let's do this. So Mogera is tasked with fighting SpaceGodzilla first. SpaceGodzilla is seen as the greater threat. But Major Yuki, fueled by revenge, flies toward Godzilla instead and fires at him. Koji realizes the Major has gone rogue and knocks him out with a karate chop. And it has to be a karate chop because they're all wearing thick pilot helmets. So it's kind of unclear how he actually knocked this guy out, but they needed a way to knock him out really quickly. So karate chop to the neck it is.
Sure.
So as Koji and Kyo take back control, they fly towards SpaceGodzilla, bringing a pissed off Godzilla behind them. Mogera flies around SpaceGodzilla, strafing and firing missiles. As they land, they fire their chest plasma laser cannon. Then they get in close and start drilling into SpaceGodzilla. But SpaceGodzilla is naturally as tough as regular Godzilla, and it only takes a few lightning breaths for SpaceGodzilla to bring down Mogera. Then Godzilla arrives. Unfortunately, Godzilla is not a kaiju of diverse tactics, and SpaceGodzilla hits him with some lightning breaths to take him down as well.
As we all know, Godzilla is famously vulnerable to electricity. That's definitely been established. He's definitely vulnerable to electricity and not totally immune to it.
Well, so it's kind of like the King Ghidorah thing, where it's visibly lightning breath, but really it could be like the gravity beams or whatever. And the evidence for that is like the next thing he does is lifts Godzilla up in the air using the energy from his crystal shoulders and then throws him into a building. So, you know, it's energy blasts, but I say lightning breath.
Yeah, a generic energy blast.
So it appears that SpaceGodzilla is using the crystals he implanted in the city along with the central skyscraper in Fukuoka to draw power from the Earth. So as long as the crystals are up, SpaceGodzilla is unstoppable. Godzilla realizes this and starts blasting the crystals instead.
This is good video game stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good video game, like, mechanic.
Yeah, SpaceGodzilla will be a great boss fight.
Yeah.
And SpaceGodzilla will, by the way, keep showing up in Godzilla video games. Oh. This movie is not that great of a movie. People love SpaceGodzilla.
SpaceGodzilla, super cool design.
Mm-hmm.
Also, SpaceGodzilla, I think it's a fun name. It is a fun name. I'm upset that this movie could have been better. That's all. It's not really anything. His method of origin is a little wacky. It's a little bit 1942 instead of 1997 in terms of its comic bookiness, but, whatever, sure. Listen, if the rest of the movie was firing at not even on all cylinders, but on more cylinders, and then it was like, this is SpaceGodzilla's origins, I'd be like, I don't care. That's funny then. But it's just symptomatic of a larger problem within the script, and so I don't like it. It's not as charming as it could be, which makes me upset because I do genuinely enjoy wacky B-movie stuff when it's good. When it's entertaining.
This movie feels like it came out like right after Godzilla vs. Megalon, but without the Godzilla vs. Megalon 70s crappy movie charm.
Yeah.
So Major Yuki wakes up and realizes that SpaceGodzilla is actually the bigger threat, so he's going to lock in. Mogera splits into two vehicles.
Buy our toys.
Koji and Kyo are taking the drill tank half, which is the land Mogera, while Major Yuki takes the jet half, which is the Star Falcon. Koji and Kyo drill underground and then attack the central tower to disrupt SpaceGodzilla's ability to draw energy, and Major Yuki uses the Star Falcon to take strafing shots at SpaceGodzilla, distracting him enough for Godzilla to finish the job and destroy the tower.
Major Yuki must work alongside his enemy Godzilla to stop the greater threat. See what we're getting at here? That's good. That's good. Wish this could have been some larger underlying theme that the movie actually paid attention to.
And we're going to get to a moment that also completely obliterates this whole dynamic. I'm going to be mad about that, but we'll get there in a few minutes. Land Mogera and Star Falcon come back together to form Mogera, and then the robot teams up with Godzilla to mess up SpaceGodzilla. It's an all-out brawl at this point, with biting and clawing and spiral grenade missiles and lightning breath. At one point, Mogera shatters the crystals in SpaceGodzilla's shoulders, so SpaceGodzilla just wrecks Mogera in response. So at this point, it's time to abandon ship. Koji and Kyo take an escape pod out of there, but Major Yuki stays behind. Yuki realizes that Godzilla has saved his life, and it's time to return the favor. So, recap. Yuki made a special bullet called Yuki Special that was crafted to kill Godzilla. This bullet is the manifestation of his vendetta against Godzilla. And this movie in particular, the evil kaiju, is another form of Godzilla. So it would make sense if the bullet that he purposefully made to kill Godzilla, a limited resource, he used instead to kill SpaceGodzilla. But no, he grabs a missile launcher and then he doesn't even fire the missile. He instead gets back in Mogera and launches the jets and just kind of tackles SpaceGodzilla. So
we could have had Chekhov's blood clot bullet, but no.
Literally,
because that's what the bullet does. To be very clear, the blood coagulation, it's to give him a blood clot. They're trying to take out Godzilla with a stroke.
But it's that whole thing where it's we have the moment where Yuki is like, I am now going to work with my sworn enemy in order to save the world, but we don't have the thing where he uses the thing to kill Godzilla to kill the other Godzilla. And this is the movie where we are fighting another monster that is another Godzilla.
Again, the movie setting stuff up and totally ignoring it. It's supposed to be setup, payoff, not setup, whatever.
Yeah, and then SpaceGodzilla arrives.
It's lazy writing.
So Koji rushes to save Yuki from the robot wreck, but Yuki's foot is caught in a latch, so he's like dangling from the wreck. Thankfully, Miki found out she had telekinesis earlier, and she uses that to save Yuki. But it's drawn out. She's just like, hey, Koji, let me see through your eyes. And then Koji opens up his mind, and Miki looks through his eyes, and so she can see the foot, which apparently she wasn't able to see earlier from where she's standing. And then she uses her telekinesis to pick him up and, like, carry him over to a safe platform. It's dumb. It's so dumb.
This movie clocks in at 147 minutes, which is not a long movie, but it's not a short movie either. So I don't understand why they're padding everything out like this. Especially when they're ignoring potentially interesting things. Like, it'd be one thing if they were kind of covering more interesting things, except that they're throwing out these breadcrumbs and these setups and then ignoring them and then doing other things and then padding out the movie with these extra long sequences for no reason that drag and make me even more bored. And I don't understand why, because 147 minutes is already, like, that's a long... Even if they cut out 17 minutes, that's still an hour and a half, which is a really respectable movie length.
Yeah.
You know?
It's also giving us a lot to talk about because, unless I've been editing the hell out of this episode, we're already past an hour.
Oh, yeah.
So the humans run for their lives. Godzilla fires his atomic breath, and he destroys both SpaceGodzilla and Mogera, because Mogera shot at him earlier, so he's still pissed off at the robot.
Mm-hmm.
The Earth is saved. Godzilla returns to the sea, and a grateful Miki telekinetically pops off the Project T amplifying dish that's still stuck in the kaiju's neck.
Even though it doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything. That project failed.
Except hurt Miki.
Yeah, she's just, like, she bet it itches, so she takes it off his neck. And then Godzilla turns to face Miki, as if thanking her. And the Cosmos twins thank her too. As Major Yuki and Dr. Gondo couple up, and Miki and Koji couple up, Kyo yells at Godzilla that he still has something to settle with him, damn it. We end the movie with Miki and Koji psychically checking up on little Godzilla as he fires weak atomic bubble breath.
Would have been really cool if we got way more of Major Yuki and Dr. Gondo.
Yeah.
Like, being a thing before they coupled up. Because at least they kind of tried with Miki and Yoji. But with Yuki and Gondo, they did not as much.
I skipped over this in the summary, but there's like a quick scene right before they climb into the Mogera robot where Dr. Gondo runs up to Major Yuki and she's like, hey, we both have something to live for. And Major Yuki just kind of gives her this look, and then he takes out a lighter and he's like, hey, fill this up with gas for me. And then he climbs into the robot.
No, I remember that. I remember that scene. I liked it. And I was like, oh, this is fun. Because it's like now it's also him, because he has had such a driven mindset. And you're like, is he going to kill himself taking down Godzilla? And now this is the concept of like, well, here is my lighter. I smoke. I'm going to need it back. Like, you're going to refill it for me. So this is my promise to come back. But it's also like a token just in case, you know. Like, that's good. That's the only scene with them before they couple up. Like, that's the problem. That's a good scene out of context of the rest of the movie, and the fact that that's, like, their first scene really together, like, establishing some sort of relationship. Other than that, we just, like, yeah, they know the same guy that got killed. Thousands of people got killed in the Godzilla attacks, by the way. So are there also, like, just scores of Yukis that swear revenge on Godzilla? Like,
probably.
Like, Godzilla killed my friend. It's like, you're not fucking special. Godzilla killed a lot of people's friends.
And, like, it's weird that we're on the, Return of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Biollante, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. This is the 6th movie of the Heisei era, and we just now have a character who was like, Godzilla killed someone I loved, and now I'm coming after Godzilla. That's a very easy character motivation to set up.
I feel like it would have been really interesting if there was like a coalition of anti-Godzilla people trying to like work together, and it was some sort of larger movement or conspiracy that the government had to deal with because they wanted to assetatize Godzilla, make him an asset. Assetatize is my new that's a gift from me to you. But no, it's just an individual because he's so individualistic, because he's a rogue.
And they can't radicalize the Psychic Institute because all those kids love Godzilla. They're making crayon drawings of Godzilla.
I do think it's kind of funny that the implications that the Psychic Institute is, because they want to use these children to control Godzilla, they are radicalizing these like they're propagandizing these kids to love Godzilla despite his body count.
Yeah.
At least one of them, statistically speaking, at least one of those kids has to be an orphan because of Godzilla, right? Like, yeah. That's the other thing too, is Godzilla rampages in an incredibly destructive fashion often, and yet we really don't actually deal with the sort of collective grief that would cause, like the actual scale of destruction that would cause, which is weird because Godzilla is about the grief caused by the destruction caused by the atomic bomb, both of them. So it's just like a little weird that we have a couple of characters that are so affected by it, but then also kind of, it seems like an individual problem, not like a collective society problem. You know, it just feels like something that kind of gets glossed over and ignored in a way that is weird because of the specific context of the franchise.
Like Godzilla will destroy buildings every movie, but the only time we've ever lingered on like, oh, Godzilla has been through here and these buildings are destroyed was in the beginning of Godzilla versus Biollante. And that was to set up the private mercenaries attempting to take the leftover Godzilla cells. Like the purpose of that scene wasn't even like, oh, let us marvel at the destruction. It was, no, here's our 80s action movie setup of these private mercenaries trying to steal Godzilla cells.
Yeah.
And it's like, once again, we go back to the original Godzilla where they made sure to have scenes of like people looking over the radiation burned victims and like children crying because they have now been orphaned by Godzilla. The original Godzilla was like, there is mass destruction going on, and now we are going to zoom in on the humans who are terrified and scared of that destruction. And,
yeah, there's a tangible grief baked into the franchise, and yet it's not there in a lot of the movies. And I get that tonally it wouldn't always fit. I'm not saying that every single movie needs that. But this movie is supposed to deal with the grief of Godzilla. It's the motivation of multiple characters. And yet we don't really actually, like why is the government not being... The government is trying to make Godzilla an asset, and Miki is only against this because of Godzilla's feelings. But why isn't there greater pushback of like, how are you gonna get, like, how are people gonna be okay with this? Mm-hmm. You know, and this in a larger, and guess what that would work well for? That would work as a larger metaphor of the use and, well, not necessarily the use, but the hoarding of atomic weapons. How can people be okay with something that destructive and terrible being around and being in the hands of the governments? Like, you could talk about that. You could take that step further. You can discuss this and have it be an actual theme in the movie, and they just ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't touch on it.
That would require this movie to have themes.
That would require this movie to be well written.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even, like, that's the other thing too, actually. You know, like, I'm ragging on how not well written this movie is, but you could have those themes and you can touch on that and still, like, you know, making an argument, this film actually making an argument and actually making a statement wouldn't necessarily translate it to being, like, super well written and tight and locked in or whatever. Like, it could still be clumsy, but at least it would be saying something. And instead it starts the sentence and then cuts off.
Well, yeah,
constantly.
I mean, like, Godzilla versus Mothra, they had multiple people look into the camera and say, because of our effects on Earth, we are being punished by Mother Gaia. But the actual events of the movie were like, no, this is all meteors and giant monsters. We had actually no hand in all of this. And we're not even going to do the karmic punishment of Godzilla killing the CEO, which we did in the previous Mothra versus Godzilla.
Poorly written.
Yeah, but this movie, it's like they don't even try to touch on themes. There's like a little, they like dip their toes into like, oh, maybe love will save us all from having lifelong blood vendettas. But even then, it's like you have someone who directed Teen Idol stuff, and they don't even give the proper time to have the romantic scenes of people bonding together.
It's disappointing. It's just disappointing because I could see where it could be better. I mean, that's the entire discussion that we've been having is, but what if they did this? Hindsight is 2020, I guess. They were working on too tight of a deadline and they didn't do that.
I will say the kaiju action was a lot better in this movie. I wasn't bored by it like I was in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2.
Yeah, they were moving.
I liked how SpaceGodzilla had boss mechanics. I like how he could like fly around and like shoot lasers from his crystals. I like how
he was cool.
Yeah, and like Mogera's design is stupid, but it's also unique.
I mean, it is kind of cool that it can break up into a land Mogera and then a flying space jaguar. No, Star Falcon.
Yes.
It's neat. It's interesting. It's fun. That's cool. There's a lot of like little fun bits in here, and like this would have been really cool in a better movie.
And also, Godzilla has a character motivation.
Yeah.
Godzilla's son was taken from him by another Godzilla, and he will destroy literally anything that stands in his way in order to get little Godzilla back. That's great.
You know what would have been cool?
What?
If Major Yuki's motivation wasn't that his friend got killed, but that his son got killed.
There we go. You know?
Like,
there's even a scene where, like, right after Lil Godzilla gets kidnapped, Major Yuki just kind of, like, walks away. And everyone's like, wait, hang on, aren't you still going to try to kill Godzilla? And Major Yuki's like, he's had a bad enough day already. I'll do it later.
We'll fight another day. He's still hanging on to his revenge vendetta.
I will say, after watching Son of Godzilla, I thought to myself, Godzilla having a son is an inherently stupid premise. And this movie made me think, no, actually, Godzilla having a Bobby Hill can actually be really good.
It can work.
It can work.
Yeah, it can work. It didn't not work. It just, and the things that are happening in this movie that matter, it feels like it's not as high up on the list as it should be.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting. You have Lil Godzilla who likes humans, so you have that connective tissue. But also Lil Godzilla getting kidnapped by an evil space kaiju gives Godzilla a character motivation. And it's not like a humanizing motivation. Like an animal would also have this same motivation to protect their young. And so that part works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's humanizing, like, not in a way of trying to make Godzilla a human, but that it is relatable.
Yeah. Godzilla is not just a rage monster. Godzilla is an animal / force of nature. It was the same thing as Mothra trying to get back her egg, or, the twin fairies.
It's like, well, yeah, sure, of course. Well, I don't know, Kevin. What would you rate this one?
I had the same effect that you had. Like, I kind of liked this movie, and then I realized that I was just starved for proper character motivation from the previous movies, and kind of going over how all of that potential is just kind of dropped, also kind of dropped my own feelings on it. I think I'm going to go with 2.5 out of 5, just because, like, the kaiju fights are good, and it is better than the previous movies, but I still wouldn't recommend this one over Godzilla vs. Ghidorah. That is my mid bar. If I would recommend this movie in the same breath as Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, and I wouldn't.
Every day I grow fonder and fonder of Godzilla vs. Ghidorah in contrast. Like, I'm gonna give this one 2 out of 5.
Okay.
I'm so mad and upset by the potential that is lost, so it doesn't get extra bonus points for me.
Oh, one last fun fact before we talk about the next movie that we're going to be talking about. So they finally built an air duct into the Godzilla suit, so performer Kenpachiro Satsuma wouldn't bake alive.
Oh, good.
Yeah, previously they didn't really give a shit, but they finally built a hole in the suit so that way he could breathe.
There could be some airflow. Oh my god. Finally.
So, Kayla, what's the next movie we're watching?
Next, we'll be watching Godzilla vs. Destroya, 1995. Be sure to watch the Japanese version, not the English dub. If you like this podcast, be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, leave a comment, and share with a friend. Follow us on social media. We got the links in the show notes. We also have a Ko-fi. You can support us there and get access to cool bonus content like extra episodes and access to the private Discord where you can talk with other geeks about Godzilla and all things Digital Kaiju. Check it out! Gorilla Whale is a production of Digital Kaiju Studios. It is hosted and produced by Kevin Carpenter and Kayla Knutson. Gorilla Whale has no official affiliation with Toho, Legendary, or any other companies associated with the Godzilla franchise. We thank you for watching along with us. Until next time, watch out for kaiju.
Watch out for kaiju.
Play the music.